everybody, for having me here today. The title of my presentation is The Future of Smell and Taste. And I'm going to frame it, though, in a challenge to the incredibly intelligent youth I've seen here at RoseHulman today. And it's really about the future of the world and what it means to be human. So let's talk about it right from the get-go. We live in a society, a world, there's about 7 billion people on Earth. We're headed towards 9 billion by the year 2050. Many people think it's going to happen before that. And we live in a situation where today, October 5th, 2013, there's actually enough food every single day being produced to make sure everybody has enough food on a daily basis. But the truth of the matter is we all know it's not equitably shared. In the United States, we have plenty of food. In fact, we have a situation where we have resource wastage, where 30 to 40% of approximately all the food that's produced every single day, restaurants, in your own refrigerator, grocery stores, quick service, Walmart, gets thrown out, thrown away. Whereas around the world we have approximately 850 million people who literally are just desperate to get some kind of one meal going in their lives. So that's one aspect of things, and it's not that you don't know about world hunger, that's not new information, but it's more about what can you do as engineers, as scientists, as future thought leaders to impact what this means in the world. So that's one aspect of what we're talking about today. And the other aspect is equally important. It's around fragrances. But what is really a fragrance? Fragrance in our world is an expression of our identity, of ourselves. It's beauty, it's decorative, but it's also fundamental to our very nature of being humans, being clean. And if you ask any group of people what they desire to feel like when they get up in the morning, they want to feel fresh and clean. That is one of the number one ways that we define ourselves as a modern civilization. And it brings us to the very same issue, because there are hundreds of millions of people, close to 1 billion every day, who don't have access to clean water. So obviously if you don't have clean water, you don't have clean hygiene. You can't wash yourself, you can't wash your clothes, you don't have sheets, maybe you don't have the toilet, and so on and so forth. Let's carry on. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is water. It's about a resource that is not equitably gotten, and in fact, it's interesting to think about the fact that of all the water that there is on Earth, and there's a fair amount, that only 2.5% of the total water supply today is actually fresh water. We all know that desalination exists, and there are technologies that can convert ocean water and seawater into drinking water, as well as water used for agriculture. But it's expensive and it's difficult to do so, and therefore that means cost, and most people that don't have access to water certainly don't have the money to be desalinating and shipping and transporting this incredibly heavy resource around. Over time, collectively, we are going to run into a water problem. This is already a known fact, and that's actually going to impact developed societies equally as much. One thing I came across recently that really struck me is if everybody in the UK took 1 minute shorter showers. So if the average shower is 7 to 8 minutes and they took 1 minute shorter, that 1 minute would collectively provide water for all of London. So I'd like to challenge everybody in the room, including myself, to think about reducing your showers by 1 minute. It doesn't sound like a lot, it really isn't. But let's think about the next issue, food safety. So not only do you need to have the food, but it needs to be healthy food. It can't be scary food. And we all know that in China there's some very big issues in one of the most rapidly developing economies with food safety. We have issues with food safety here, and that's because we now have come to expect so much variety and interesting things in food that we're creating and transporting so many varieties that it's almost impossible to manage all the different aspects of transportation, refrigeration, the actual agriculture, the growing, the ripening that occurs in supermarkets now rather than on trees. And that leads me right into food longevity. What is food longevity? It sounds kind of irrational, right? All of us are thinking these days, if you see on the food channels and you see at the better restaurants, we're all about farm to table. We're about artisanal cheese, artisanal beer, connoisseur chocolate, all these micro things. Some of you may be keeping bees. That's a trend with the Gen Y generation that you guys represent. But the truth of the matter is one of the ways we're going to resolve the hunger issue and more equitably around the world is finding ways to preserve food that's fresh and feels as if you made it today, but make it last for a long time. So here's an interesting career path for you. NASA and the Pentagon. NASA is now making bread pudding that actually taste as good as it is today, made for 4 years. So what does that mean? Well, it means when we go to Mars, those astronauts will actually have something to eat, thank goodness, right? Until they figure out a way to actually produce some kind of food on Mars, because, let's face it, they're not coming back. They need to have something that's going to be attractive. It also is extremely interesting because if food can now last for years at a time and actually be delectable and transported to places, it resolves a lot of problems around issues like Hurricane Sandy. So if something happens like that, you can help people who need help at an immediate level that can't get fresh refrigeration, even in a developed society like here. It also can help people who are in places that don't have refrigeration, because the way these things are packaged now, and they don't have microorganisms in them, they can really last for a long time and don't need any kind of refrigeration. People can sit on them and have it shipped to them months and years later as needed. As we move along, I wanted to show you a chart that I created that kind of defines, if you will, a new Malthusian way of thinking. What does it mean to go into the middle class? Well, first thing you need is 1 meal, then you need 2 meals. Then you need to have nutritious meals, protein, vegetables, fruits, and a starch, rather than the subsistence level of living that so many people experience, where basically they have one kind of starch and maybe on occasion the rare protein. Then you get to 3 meals, which is kind of where we are, luckily, in this society. At that point, it becomes a whole panoply of different opportunities. It's about access, it's about variety, it's about ready to eat. When you have access, variety, and ready to eat, women are able to enter into the workforce. They're able to be more educated. Children in all of these developing countries are able to be educated. They're not working on a subsistence farm and making sure that there's food on the table. That obviously leads to a better society for all of us. That's something we should all be thinking about. Then, the most upper level is then where you get to the pure pleasure, sensory pleasure. And that's a whole topic in and of itself. It's very complicated, but all the things that we love to eat, whether it's pizza, and potato chips, and Doritos, and Coca-Cola, so on and so forth, they're actually devised to intrigue you, to tickle you, to give you comfort, to give you familiarity, to give you excitement, to give you pleasure in different ways. And that's a whole avenue of opportunity that's very exciting right now. One of the things I came across recently from a scientist I spoke to is a trend of putting together savory with sweet. So he said, well, imagine what a bacon chocolate cupcake would taste like. And he said that he actually went and made this bacon chocolate cupcake, found some recipes, tweaked them, made them, and then is constructing a flavor note that tastes like that. So who knows, maybe next year in the freezer case, your ice cream that you will choose is a bacon chocolate cupcake ice cream. So at the end of the day, food technology is so much more interesting than just growing wheat, right? There's a lot of opportunity here, and I encourage you to think about it. Because not only is it something that's commercially important for all of us, but it really is something that's going to impact the entire world as we move forward as a society. And I want to just kind of jump into a little bit about what it means to be in a flavorist world. So I talked a little bit a second ago about bacon. Well, what about a common ingredient like vanilla? I want to show you how something that seems so simple can actually work in so many different ways. Vanilla in a beverage is actually a key component in cola. Cola's got a whole bunch of key notes in it. It has caramel, it has clove, it has vanilla, and it's all balanced together. And the flavor companies and the fragrance companies of the world, they tend to be one and the same because they are specialty chemicals at the end of the day. Each of them probably have 300, 400, 500 vanillas, and they work for different, what we call applications. So beverages is one application. Another application is confectionery. That would be vanilla cookies, vanilla cakes, ready to eat, and not, as the case may be. Savory, you wouldn't think that vanilla could be used in savory. So what is savory? Savory is like ham, it's meat, it's mushrooms, it's all that umami-rich stuff that is typically associated with more with meats and poultries. Well, there's some interesting applications with vanilla with lobster and vanilla shrimp. There's some sauces out there. So someday in the future, you may see a vanilla lobster sauce coming to you in your frozen food case. Dairy, well, this is an easy one. A lot of people like vanilla milk, but beyond that, there are people that can't drink milk for various and sundry reasons. So in that case, the most popular replacement today is soy milk. It's inexpensive to produce, so it's very resource efficient. However, if you ever actually taste real soy milk, and there's plenty of soy around here, it's disgusting, and you would never want to put it in your mouth ever again. So what do we do as an industry? Well, we have to mask the ugly flavors, quite frankly, the bitterness, the unattractiveness. And then after that's done, we want to layer on something that's appealing. And vanilla is a very classically appealing taste. So that's something that I'm sure many of you have experienced in the grocer's case. Vanilla is actually a good topic because it allows me to segue a little bit into fragrance. It's equally a fragrance note that's very common. It's estimated that 1 in 3 fragrances use some kind of vanilla in it. It's because it's rich, it's deep, it's velvety, it stays very long on skin. And it kind of makes sense because the sense of smell is actually very impactful for taste. In fact, 80% of taste is considered to be smell. As you eat, you swallow, the saliva and your glands get to work, the aroma molecules open up, it goes into your nose, and all of a sudden you experience taste. So it's very complicated. But some of the people in the room, there's at least 2 or 3 people here who are one of those people who are lucky enough to be able to name fragrances on other people. Maybe it's something they've always been able to do. And if you're one of those people, I strongly encourage you to consider a career in fragrances and flavors because you have a very unique, what we call olfactive or gustatory talent, and it actually is quite rare. But let's go back to the main topic at hand. What is it to be middle class in the world of fragrance? Well, it has to do with living as a human. It has to do, as I said earlier, with being clean. And there's so many ways to think about it. From the top down, a fine fragrance means something like a Ralph Lauren or a Calvin Klein or Balenciaga fragrance. That is an expression of perhaps your personality, your femininity, your masculinity. And it's maybe a way to express yourself in the same way that you choose a pair of shoes or you choose the outfit that you're going to wear today. But consumer and functional fragrances are something that surrounds all of us, and equally I believe that everybody should have the right to good functional fragrances. And what that means is to be able to have shampoo, to be able to wash yourself, to be able to have clean clothes, to be able to sleep on clean sheets, to be able to make sure your children have clothes that are so clean that they're not going to die of some kind of strange disease, to be able to make sure that your dishes are clean, again, reducing disease. So these are all part of the mutual mission that we should all have collectively in making sure that the future is more equitable and that everybody has certain basic human rights. And I personally believe that this is one of them. Technical perfumery is an area of opportunity where you can be the person that maybe isn't the 1 in 300 of fine perfumes that create those very rarefied perfumes you see in the department stores and at Sephora, but you're actually still an important perfumer because you're the one that takes maybe a fine fragrance and translates it into different lotions and different ways that other people experience it. Molecular discovery is also very interesting because the truth of the matter is in fragrance and in food, there are not enough natural resources for all of us to experience natural everything. It sounds good intellectually, but it's not a reality. If we were actually every day to eat everything purely natural and purely organic, the truth of the matter is every single botanical, every single plant, every single rainforest would probably be decimated. So actually you would be doing the world a great deal of good by going into this industry or thinking about it, even on a personal level, because it means that if it's done correctly, we can create nature-identical molecules and that will give everybody the same sensation as the richest person, as the poorest person. I wanted to jump for just a minute into the fine fragrance part of it because I was asked initially to come talk about that, and I wanted to show you a couple of ads that you may have seen. Here's some bottles. It's another avenue of interest for engineers. They're called packaging engineers. And here's a fragrance that was developed around a couple of simple ideas. This particular person said she wanted to make a fragrance around Easter eggs, ballet slippers, a vintage doorknob that was in her home, and her favorite color, which happened to be pink. And it turned into this. So as you can see, the bottle is an egg. The top is the vintage doorknob. The perfumer worked with her to create a fragrance that matched this look. And they also bought 100 ballet slippers and asked her to choose the perfect shade of pink. To bring it all back home, it's my belief that the entire world should be entitled to have pretty good food and pretty great fragrances to be able to live well. I think that all of you, some of you, hopefully will think about that. Maybe you'll have a part to play in making that future dream come true. Thank you.